I'm just going to spotlight Paul, so he's on the screen with me for this initial intro. Paul, if you haven't noticed, was on our podcast on Monday evening. We had a live session where we gave a kind of introduction to permaculture. Paul shared a lot about the work that he's done and how any one of us can actually embrace the notion of permaculture and embed it into our lives. And in fact, since that podcast, it is rumored that the United Kingdom has been littered with apple seeds, and we are witnessing the very birth of a movement across the United Kingdom. For those of you who haven't seen or heard the episode, I asked Paul what's the simplest way to get started, and the message was simple. Even if you've got no garden or terrace or anywhere to grow, take your apple seed from your apple core and plant it in the earth. And we seem to have begun a movement in that regard. Now, for those of you who don't know Paul, I'll give the formal introduction. He's a powerful advocate of permaculture and its ability to solve many of the world's problems. You'll see from the sign behind him, he is dubbed the Duke of Permaculture. He's once given the title of Bad Boy of Permaculture. He's the author of many books on the subject of permaculture and building communities. He's offered many different courses and experiences. He's cultivated a physical community as well as an online community. And he spreads the good word of permaculture in many, many forms, from his YouTube channel to podcast presentations, conversations like this, really trying to, as he says, get into people's minds to get them to think differently about the world and how they can play a role through embracing the concepts of permaculture. So he really is a titan in the space, and we are delighted to have Paul with us this evening. So it's my pleasure to have you here, Paul, once again. If you haven't seen our episode with Paul, don't worry, you can see it on all of our channels. It's also on our audio podcast, so you can hear more from Paul. Tonight is an open Q&A, so it's your opportunity to ask your pertinent questions, whether you've never heard of permaculture before and you're here because you're absolutely curious about what we're talking about. If you saw my video earlier on, perma what? Then maybe some of you are here because you're simply interested in beginning your journey. Some of you may have already started doing things like growing your own foods, forming your own communities. Some of you may, even from our survey, have formed your own co-ops and doing things on a grander scale in your local communities. And some of you may be at the advanced end of the permaculture spectrum, in which case this is also for you. So wherever you're at, whether you have no idea what permaculture even means, or whether you're an advanced practitioner and you've built communities, or you've built a setup where you can actually live embodying the permaculture principles, there's something for you tonight. It's an open session, so all of your questions are invited. There is no such thing as a stupid question. This is an open house. I've also given Paul the opportunity, if he wishes, to reverse the question and answers and put it on you and ask you questions. So looking forward to a fun and exciting evening. Before we kick off the questions, though, I have an opening question for you, Paul, because on the podcast, we largely spoke about food and how people can embrace the concept of food, growing their own food supplies. We talked also about the ways people can heat their homes in a much more efficient way. But prior to us starting tonight, we started talking about community, and you've built an online community, but also an offline community where you've actually begun working in with local people to actually build a new way of living. Could you just give us a kind of overview of the community that you've built where you are?
Oh, the physical community.
I
do want to talk about that, but you said a thing, and I have to react to that.
Please.
So you said there's no such thing as a stupid question. So I want to try this out for you. Hey Dan, do I like pie?
Maybe.
So I think that in fact, you said, could I ask everybody else questions? So maybe in the chat they could type out a question that they might think is might qualify as a stupid question. So no, but it's like stupid questions are still fun. They are okay. The physical community. We have tried a lot of things. Right now, I think the thing that's working the best is what we call the Permaculture Boot Camp. And so that's where we say, learn permaculture through a little hard work. And we get a lot of different people who come, but I think much like, and I imagine every military, including in the UK, you have boot camp, right? Because I know that's where the word comes from. And so the idea is that, you're going to go into the military. The first thing you do is you go through 6 weeks of boot camp where they don't let you sleep. And the idea is that they're going to tear you down and build a whole new person who's a soldier. And I kind of feel like we don't exactly do any of that tear you down stuff, but I do think that there's some people who come here and they want to be somebody else. They want to be a permaculture person. And so then they jump in and they're like, I'm going to just do this all the way because I want to become a permaculture person. And so we hope to create somebody that can be very proud of their accomplishments and things of that nature. We don't have a pace like a boot camp exactly, but it is hard work. And the first couple of weeks, people get to rest a lot. But it's like right now, this time of year, every morning is gardening, and every afternoon is generally natural building. But right now, there's a lot about event prep. We got our summer events going to start here in a few days. So a lot of that stuff, but it's still, probably far more entertaining than what, most people do. It's kind of like an alternative to college, I suppose. And it's an educational thing. We view it as an educational thing, but it's hands-on experience. We also have a program called the SEPR program, where people can rent one of our structures for a week or a month, and they can join the boot camp as much or as little as they like. As part of that, we have what we call the Thistle program, where basically it's a separate program, but people bring kids that are 12 years old or older, and to participate basically in the boot camp with their parents. We have Ant Village, where people can rent an acre and see if they have what it takes to build a structure before the snow flies. We have Deep Roots, which is where people can kind of rent an acre for life kind of a thing. So we have and then of course the events. We have a lot of people who come by and participate in our events here, and then several of them sometimes choose to stay. We had 2 people arrive a few years ago for our permaculture design course, and they both decided to stay. Apparently each one was keen on the other, and it took them 6 months until they could say it out loud. They are now married, and she inherited 500 acres down in Texas. So they're down there in Texas now. But it does seem like there's some matchmaking stuff that happens here. Did I answer your question the way you wanted it answered? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to kick us off. So for those of you in the room with us, there's a couple of ways to ask questions. So if you are familiar with the Zoom function, there's a reactions button that you can click where you can click the raise hand button so we can see you visually in the Zoom room. Some of you have already started asking questions in the chat. It would be lovely to bring you up to ask your question personally if we can, so that you can interact. Otherwise, I'm happy to field it for you. So let's see. So Al's asked our first stupid question, as he's labeled it himself. That's his definition. So I don't know if you want to, Al, are you on the call? Do you want to field your quote unquote stupid question? I think it's a very reasonable question, and I'm very interested to see how Paul answers.
Hello. I've got a barking dog now. She barks when I have conversations. When I say hello to people, she thinks somebody's at the door. Anyway,
it's the mailman.
My stupid question may or may not be a stupid question, but does your government work for you?
So, of course, my government, I suspect, is different than your government. We each get assigned one when we're born. And I gotta say that my position on politics is that political stuff is a circus made dominantly of scary clowns whose primary function is to distract you from what's really going on. And I kind of feel like here in the United States, we did a great job in that department for politics not too long ago. the guy was literally orange. Did you see that? Maybe you guys didn't notice. If you didn't notice, I'm proud of you. That's really the delicious path, is to not notice things like that. Does your government work for you? It either does or it doesn't. I guess you get to find out. I mean, that's another thing too, is I'm a powerful advocate for permaculture combined with homesteading. I think that's the most delicious thing. And when you're doing that really well, all that political stuff becomes really small and far away, which is the best way to keep it, I think. But if you live in the city and you don't have much of a garden, then the political stuff is very important, because those people, when they make a mistake, you might find that now you got to slowly starve to death, and that's not cool. But if you live out in the country, far away from the city, and you have a big, magnificent garden, it's not that big of a deal. So you kind of end up not caring. I mean, wouldn't that be lovely to be able to know that all this same political stuff that's been going on for thousands of years, now it kind of doesn't matter so much? I mean, you know, if they had a whole different set of politicians come in to do it a different way, it probably wouldn't really change much for you. I mean, it could, and you should all, you know, be really concerned about it. But I don't know. I used to read that there was a thing a long time ago called a newspaper, and I would read it. It came every day, and it gave me, and every day I got a fresh ulcer finding out what's going on. I mean, granted, I did turn to the comics first, but then after I was all done with that, then it's like, what do I read next? And that's where you get the stomach ache. And it was in big part because of that I kind of ended up going down permaculture road. First down gardening road, then permaculture. But I think a lot of our global problems can be solved with permaculture stuff, and it's a big part of why I'm traveling the path that I'm traveling. But all right, so the question is does it work for you? And I wish to give an answer like, I don't care. You know,
fantastic. It was a stupid question. That was the whole point, wasn't it?
I think you tried, and then Dan found it to be not so stupid. So here we are.
Well, I think your response is indicative, actually, of the way a lot of people feel right now, Paul, in terms of what's been happening over the last few years. You know, people are the kind of the culture and the trajectory that the world is on. I think people are looking as a result for greater self-sufficiency, forming their own communities. And I think actually the response to the question really speaks to that. And you've spoken about how you've made choices that has given you the ability to have that. And I think that is something that people are. I mean, I'd be interested just in the comments, right? In the comments, if you're here tonight because that's something you're interested in, finding out, getting greater self-sufficiency, creating your own food economy. I'm very curious, because my sense is, with the world as it stands, people are looking to make choices. And this is why I think there's going to be a real surge in interest in permaculture, new communities. So I think your response actually speaks to how a lot of people are feeling, without having to go into the nuances and the stomachache of politics, because it is, most of us are nauseatingly sick of politics.
I like Muna's question. I don't know if that's how to pronounce her name.
Yeah, Muna, thank you, Al. Muna, would you like to come on the screen and ask the question yourself?
Hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, Paul. Hi, Dan. Hi, everybody. So basically, I'm really, really bad at growing stuff. So everything tends to die. So I do have a small garden. And what I'd like to know is, where would be a good place to start? So I've been able to grow sunflowers, but that I can't eat that. We've put strawberries in. We haven't, and we've got artichokes. It's very simple. We had potatoes. So just a small strip. However, I've got an elderly neighbor who has an allotment, and she's really good. She knows a lot about gardening. But what would you say would be a good place to start? Remember, I tend to kill things, so something that I can't get wrong, if you see what I mean. Where would be a good place to start? That's my question to you.
Are we pronouncing your name correctly? Muna? Like
Muna.
the moon.
That's right.
Muna.
It's Muna.
Ah,
Yes.
what a wonderful name.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. All right. I got to tell a story. This is how I do this. I tell stories. Okay. So I think it was like 1993 that I saw seeds at the store, and I got this idea like, oh, I'll grow a garden. I have space for a garden. And so I planted the seeds, and oh, it was so painful. Those poor seeds, they had so much hope, and they placed it in a doofus like me. They didn't, I didn't have a license to buy seeds. They'd let anybody buy them. And they, almost all of them died in my care. It was so sad. And I felt so terrible. And then I felt like, okay, I want to do this again. I want to try again, but this time I'm going to be far kinder. I'm going to learn what to do. And I became a little obsessed with reading gardening books. I read more than 100 that by the time I started my next garden. It was I was down at the library, at the bookstore, just pouring through these books. So my next garden did quite well. But all right, so here I am. You don't have to read 100 books. I mean, I want you to read 100 books, but you don't have to. No. I'm going to try, see if I can help you. Try. That's it. So I too don't have a green thumb. You said green fingers, which I thought was funny. And here's a funny thing too, is like, if you ever learn what an aphid is, and you're like, oh no, there's aphids on my plant. And so you reach up to the leaf, and the aphids are on the bottom of the leaf, and you kind of put your thumb under the leaf, and you kind of smush the little aphids. They're like grapes that are like overly ripe, and they really want to pop. And so you go, you look, stop making that face. I can still see you. But here's the funny thing is you kind of do it, and you save your little plants from these little aphids, and they're trying to suck the juices out of your plant and make the leaves curl up all weird and stuff. And while I could talk for hours about aphids, the point I'm trying to make now is that then your thumb is green because they're little green. They're green. They've been sucking the juices out of the plants that are full of green goo. And another great thing is ants. Ants come up and actually farm the aphids, and they grab an aphid and they give it a little squeeze. And they suck the sugary goo out of their butts. So sorry, going off on a little bit of a tangent there. But
that's brilliant. Thank you.
Great. You don't have to go and suck the butts of aphids.
I won't be doing.
I'm not suggesting that. I suspect it's very sweet and everything. But no, don't do that. But you can rub your thumb under there, and they go, they're all gone. And then you have a green thumb. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, Dan, what's next?
Cool. Well, great. Thank you for that. And I think what was interesting is you just to comment that you read the books in between taking action, because I think a lot of things when people come across things like this, and we in our podcast episode, I gave the analogy of the podcast. You know, people who want to start a podcast get hung up on what mic should they have, what webcam should I use, what software do I need, and they can get stuck in kind of research zone and never actually take the action. I think your message there was clear. Try, go, which I think is a wonderful message for people to take away. So thank you, Min. I'm just going to take you off the screen for now. So we've now got the next question from Russell. Would you like to come up and ask your question? Are you there, Russell? Yes. Joyce?
Yes. Hello, Dan. Hello, everybody. Hello, Paul.
I'm just looking for you. I've got a long list of people here, and you should be at the top. There we are. Got
the
you.
Screen.
Yeah, there we are. There we go. Yeah, got you.
Thanks, Dan. Hello, Paul. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I had a very. I don't have green fingers. I have sausage fingers. It's very. I can't do anything. I'm starting to grow my own food. I've just done it in the past few months actually, and I've erected a greenhouse. But I'm suffering from a really shady garden. My neighbour has Leylandii trees all the way along her garden. So I'm just curious as to what's going to grow well in a shady garden. Is it going to be successful?
All right.
Thank you.
So I should have told Muna more things to possibly grow and that are easy. They're super easy to grow. And but let's focus on shady things real quick. I'm going to say, first of all, the thing that you're going to enjoy the most is going to be your kiwis. The kiwis that are for the cold climate kiwis. They love the shade, and when you have like hundreds of them growing, it's so exciting, so much fun. I've had raspberries do reasonably well in shady areas, which is surprising. But if you've got enough great soil, and raspberries really love a sawdust or wood chip mulch. That's their most favorite mulch in the world. And so there's raspberries. Another one, and this might surprise some people, but in Great Britain, I suspect it does really good there, and that is stinging nettles. You guys have stinging nettles there. Now, and this is a great thing to put into the chat if people have eaten stinging nettles before. I'm going to, so Russell's shaking his head. You've never eaten stinging nettles. So it's not like you go down to
by them, but never eaten them.
Yeah. So, oh, good. Here's nettle tea, nettle soup. I think my favorite is nettle lasagna. But here's a. First of all, nettles have more protein than any other plant that I know of. So a lot of people are saying, "Oh, soy," and it's like, oh, you got to stop eating soy. Just get soy out of your life entirely for a long list of reasons. Talk about politics. Oh, so, but nettles. Like, let's say for those of you that eat meat, then let's say that you're like, oh, I'm so hungry for beef right now. I'm hungry for beef. Chicken won't do, pork won't do, has to be beef. I'm just so aching for beef. Have nettles, and it's like that hits the spot. That did the trick. That was exactly what I needed, and I don't know why that is, but it's apparently maybe it's a protein that's very similar to beef, but nettles, of course, you're kind of thinking like, won't they sting the inside of my mouth and stuff? And the odd thing is that if you cook them for more than 30 seconds, they lose all their sting. Another fascinating thing is that the little needles underneath, the way that they work is that they don't stab you. No, what they do is it's like they're little vials of the stingy stuff, and you break the little vials, and then it leaks little stingy stuff onto you, and that's what causes those little welts. So, but the thing is that I don't particularly like greens. I've met people where it's like, they love kale, they love all the collard greens, they love all these different greens so very much. And it's like, I don't really like that stuff, but I do like nettles, and I don't know why that is. It's a green, so it does well in shade. It is, however, a nitrogen pig. It is a nutrient pig. It needs a very rich, soggy soil. That's its favorite thing, and then they'll do great. Now you're going to harvest it in the spring. It'll be like one of the first things that comes up in the spring, and you're going to harvest it when it's less than a foot tall. And I'm trying to think, what is that, 30 centimeters or so? Am I doing my metric conversion correctly?
Imperial's great. Thank you very much.
All right, when it's less than a foot tall, then that's when you're going to go and harvest it. You're going to clip off some of the leaves, and put on some gloves, and you're going to get a bag full of the leaves, and they cook down quite a lot. Just maybe the first time, try some perhaps some scrambled eggs with some nettles in it, and you'll thank me later. But it's like you're talking about a shady spot, and of course, what you're thinking to yourself is like, I need to go and get a chainsaw. and my first garden had a lot of trees, and it's like, because I became obsessed with gardening, then my next property, I needed there to be fewer trees, and then eventually on the property that I am now, I have lots of trees, but I also happen to have lots of chainsaws, and they're my trees, and I'm building structures out of these logs, and it's like, I need more logs, and I have way too many trees. Oh, they all got to go, and because I've got to put some gardens in here and grow some trees that produce food. Yes. So, have I given you a nice start on shady stuff to get started?
Absolutely perfect, thank you. In fact, and the waste ground behind my house, plenty of nettles there. So you can go around and harvest them. That's perfect.
Yes.
Answer. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you, Russell. I have my own nettle story. I was living on I lived on a farm actually during lockdown 1. So we'd moved out of our apartment, having purchased where I currently live, and we had a gap of 2 months between well, there's a whole complication which I won't go into, but we had 2 months, and we went to live on a family member's farm, and there was this abundance of nettles, and we experimented with so many different forms of nettle everything. Nettle tea, we infused some nettle rum, which was actually incredible. We were trying to invent the next botanic alcohol infused thing. It wasn't good enough to take on gin, but it was a reasonable first attempt. Fiona, I'd like to come to you next if you're there. Oh, before we come to Fiona, Paul, you sounded like you wanted to give some additional suggestions to Muna before moving on. Did you want?
I think one good thing is to look into sunchokes, and depending on how you cook them, they are also famous for being called fartichokes. And so, but the thing about sunchokes is highest calorie production per acre. They are kind of like a really messed up looking potato, perennial, and they will tolerate the worst abuse. And so the thing is that you just stick them in the ground and make a dumb look, and boing, here it comes. And then another great feature is that you can harvest them all year long. And so I do think that there's a certain time in the spring where they're kind of pulling the carbohydrate out of the tubers in order to be able to make new plant. And so then they're kind of squishy. They're not very good. But the rest of the year, crisp and ready to go, including the middle of winter. They just sit out there in the soil waiting until you want to come and get some. That's a great plant. You kind of, and then on the top part of the plant looks like a thorny sunflower. It's a really beautiful looking thing. I mean, it's not producing any food on that part, but if you have any animals in your area that are thinking of coming over and eating your whole garden, they're not eating this. Too many thorns. So a great beginner thing. Last week we talked about the apple seeds and the potatoes, but for a beginner, sunchokes.
Thank you. So Fiona, if it's okay, you had a couple of questions in the chat. Can I bring you on the screen? Is that okay?
Sure.
There we go.
So this is a question for city dwellers without allotments. So modest, medium-sized city garden. A few questions. So one is around soil improvement, easy soil improvement. Dan, you've got someone trying to catch your attention.
My wife,
or
yeah.
Kill him. We'll have all been a witness to a murder.
Another one that I didn't put in there, but I've recently got a dog, and I used to have like strawberries and wild garlic and all sorts of stuff at ground level, and nettles. And I'm assuming that's all. I might as well just forget about that. That's a little additional question. And then, yeah, so soil improvement and how to maximize space and in a city garden.
Okay, all right. Let's come back to the dog. Let's start with soil improvement. So first of all, I'm going to guess that because your name is Fiona and you have an accent that I don't recognize, you must live on the British Isles around there. Okay, all right. And so your climate is not tropical. In fact, if you go far enough north, I've heard of these bogs of peat bogs where the organic matter builds so much it gets to be 100 feet thick over a few thousand years. So much so that it's like we're going to heat our homes with chunks of it like that. And am I close? Am I know it? Because if you live in a tropical area, building soil is also known as folly. It's like the little microorganisms are so active all the time that whenever you put organic matter into the soil, the little microorganisms say, nom, 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 thank you very much. Whereas in a colder climate, like where we all are, then we can augment the soil and we can do things and build soil. I mean, we don't want to build it to the point that we have peat bogs or anything like that, but we can take something that looks kind of like dirt and turn it into glorious soil for a garden. Now, the question is like, suppose we live in this climate, we want to build it, what are we going to do? Well, one of the major components that you're going to have inside of soil is going to be carbon. And so you really focus on the carbon the most. And so I'm not sure if that makes any sense to you, but we don't want to like mix it in exactly, but like the root matter of plants. So if you could grow a plant and convince it to grow big, then it's going to put all these roots in, and the roots are dominantly carbon. And so it's adding carbon to the soil. So the other thing is that, and this might be the most important thing I say for the next year. So everybody, I want you to really hear this part. Every time you till the soil, you lose 30% of your organic matter. All right, this is so important. I'm going to say it again. And sometimes people say, nuh-uh, and I say, well, I could say it over and over again, and I can even say it a whole lot louder if that helps. Okay, so every time you till, you lose 30% of your organic matter. So if you have soil and you till it like 5 times, you've kind of made something, you made a dirt that resembles cement, and it's hard to grow anything in that. Now, the contrary to that, the odd thing is that the first year, like let's say you did a bunch of tilling and then you tried growing stuff in that freshly tilled space, that first year you'll have a glorious garden. And that's because all of your plants are consuming the organic matter in the soil. It's made of all those freshly dead microorganisms. So you tilled and you killed all these microorganisms, and now as their bodies decay, it feeds the plants. But the end result is you now have less organic matter. And part of the tilling is that, because like organic matter is dominantly carbon, and so when you, and there's some nitrogen in there, and when you till, then a lot of that carbon and nitrogen go up into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. And I mean, our atmosphere is currently 78% nitrogen. And so it just goes right up there. But that carbon and nitrogen was stuff that the plants really want. So the number one thing for building soil is stop tilling it. And now the number one way to improve soil is through growies. So grow kind of anything, especially stuff with deep roots, because as their roots go down, that's pulling carbon from the atmosphere and putting it down into the soil. So what we want to do is grow lots and lots and lots of root mass. So we want to get lots of root mass, and then later there's all the greeny stuff on the top, and that'll eventually end up on the ground, making a lovely little mulch on the top. The mulch on the top also helps to build soil. Dry land techniques are effective, but when you have dirt and soil. In fact, if you have dirt, like it's not soil, it's just dirt or gravel or sand, till it as much as you want. It doesn't make any difference. In fact, if you've got a bunch of organic matter, your carbons, or a bunch of like, oh, I don't know, lawn clippings or wood chips are a bad idea, but you got other organic matter, you could till that in, and then it'll kind of help give you a bump. Although if it's too high in carbon, now I'm sure everybody's heard of tilling, like tilling where you're tilling in manures, right? And so then that's a quick way to kind of make garden soil out of dirt, is to till in manures. Dangerous thing these days. Probably don't want to do that. You probably don't want to import anything onto your property today. And so, Dan, I don't know if you've talked to your gardeners about persistent herbicides. Is this a new topic?
New subject.
Okay, so I did a podcast years ago, and we looked at this guy's cherry tree. We talked about persistent herbicides, and this last summer, these animators put it to animation. So I've got a YouTube video of talking about this guy's cherry tree, and it talks about basically the core of the problem with the cherry tree was persistent herbicides. This guy's like, can you look at my cherry tree and tell me why it's so sad? And so I pointed out to him how we're looking at the ground underneath. We're observing the tree. And I came up with a bunch of things, and I said, notice how under the tree, there's just grass. There's not dandelions. There's not a bunch of the weeds. But when we were looking at another patch before, grass was like not even half of what was growing. So why do you suppose it is? Well, we kind of came to the conclusion that his mom was contacted by somebody to come and get rid of the weeds in their lawn, and said, there's this new environmentally friendly herbicide. That's a lie. It's actually the most environmental disaster there is. But it's like, oh, instead of spraying 3 times a year, we spray once every 5 years. So we spray less often. Isn't that a hell of a deal? Don't you want that? And so, less toxins, right? Actually, this stuff is really bad. It's what's called a persistent herbicide. Here in the United States, aminopyrrolid, clopyrrolid, picloram are the big ones. But the thing is that you spray it in parts per million or parts per billion. It's so effective in such tiny quantities that it's almost impossible to find under a microscope. But the thing is that it lasts for its half-life is 7 to 11 years. And but what's more is that if an animal came up and ate this grass, nom 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 nom, and then up comes the other side, that still has it in it. And so then if you take that manure and you go and you put it on your garden, then all you can grow is grass, because it's a broadleaf herbicide. It only allows grasses to grow. But wait, that's not all. The grass that you're growing has it in it too. So then if you were to make hay and take that hay or straw and put it on your garden will die. If you eat a McDonald's hamburger, then the burger has persistent herbicides and the bun has persistent herbicides. So then you eat it, and then you go and you put that material later the next day into a composting toilet, and then you put that material out on your whatevers, your growies, then those growies die. It's like, this is the world of persistent herbicides that we live in today. So therefore, I'm going to just state, do not import stuff on your gardens. Instead, get seeds, grow your own organic matter to improve your soils. So what we want is a lot of living root, massive living root, as much living root as we can get in our soils, as deep as we can get. And let's also have a full canopy to act as to shade the soils, and maybe get some mulches in there. That's another way, is whatever. So like if you've got some growies over there that you don't want, go ahead and grab those all up and lay them beside the plants that you do want. We call this in permaculture chop and drop. And so move your organic matter around to where you want it the most. And so your paths can be rocks and gravel and stuff like that. But then all the organic matter that's growing there, all the growies growing there that you don't want, chop those and place them where you do want more things to grow. All right. So I've already forgotten what the question was. How far away am I from the question?
I'm also picking up some great tips on the chat. Yeah, that's a couple of seminal tips, I think, for everybody. I'm basically
soil.
growing on 6 inches of soil on top of, I inherited an entire concreted garden. So I'm building it up very, very slowly. And so I think good tip.
So the thing I really want you to do is hugelkultur. As I don't know. So Dan, have you guys talked about hugelkultur at all? So I talk about it in this book, and then I talk about it in this book too. All right. So see, I plugged my books. I'm such a cheesy. So but let's talk about the dog next. So you're trying to build organic matter, right? And it's like there's all kinds of organic matter coming out of that dog's butt every day. And it's like, but you're thinking like, ooh, I don't want it here. I'm doing other things here. Plus, the other thing I'm thinking is, ooh, like I don't want to mess with that. Now, I don't know about over there.
I'm not talking about that end. I'm talking purely about urine. And I've actually got a question about human urine as well.
Oh.
Sorry, it's not my turn. But since you're talking urine.
I think I've got a bit in here, like a subchapter in here about using human urine. I think it says that if you do it the right way, then all the microorganisms see you as a generous God. But so the thing I want to say about the dogs is keep a whole bunch of sawdust handy. And then when there's like a new landmine out in your backyard, don't scoop it up. Instead, dump a bunch of sawdust on it. The sawdust is going to help your soil, especially because it's kind of, a mulch. But also you've got this other organic matter package that'll get worked into the soil as well. And so if you put enough of it on, it eliminates all of the smell and also makes it so that it's less unsightly, if you know what I'm saying.
Does that work for cat poo as well?
Well, Cheech and Chong have a bit about, hey, is that dog shit? I don't know. Smell it. And then eventually they get to tasting it. And it's like, what? Cheech, that's Cheech and Chong. I am so old. Okay. Cats tend to want to bury it. And if you want the cats to not leave you almond roca out in the garden, then you put the pepper, the little pepper seeds out there. Cayenne pepper, I believe. You just sprinkle it out in the soil. Everything else is fine. And the cats are like, yeah, I can't do this here anymore. This is like, you've harshed my smooth, man. But dogs, we talked about the dogs. And so I've given you a tip about the sawdust. But now we could go and talk about human pee outside. But Dan, I'm not sure. Is that okay? Are we doing?
You go where you need to go. This is your time.
Good. Interesting choice of words there.
I thought that as I said it, there was not deliberate. I wish I'd been deliberate. That was fortuitous.
Yeah. Yeah, you should get paid more. So I don't know how enclosed, we were talking to Fiona, but I don't know how enclosed your yard is or how you're doing it, but maybe we don't need that part, because a lot of people are kind of like uncomfortable with that whole process, especially women. And there's devices to help women have a little bit more courage, but there's also the idea of I have a little stainless steel pitcher that you can use indoors. Then you go outside, and it's so different from all the other things in my house that I know that one's got a dedicated function, and it helps you to get it outside. But some plants are very nitrogen hungry, and it's like, take that on out, and they'll be grateful to get it. Other plants, that'll be too hot. It's too much, and you're going to want to dilute it. Now, I believe we got here from talking about dogs peeing outside, and it's kind of like, if usually they have a favorite spot, because a lot of times a dog will pee on a spot, and then a different dog will pee on that spot saying, no, it's mine, not yours, that's mine. And then they kind of have this childish argument, and they keep peeing on the exact same spot to prove who truly owns this rock. And so you end up with too much nitrogen in one spot. And so to counter nitrogen, add some more sawdust. Now, I imagine not everybody has access to sawdust. Like not everybody is got a little wood shop in their garage, and they're generating sawdust with all their little projects. And it's possible you might know somebody who has sawdust, or there's options in that space. But the key is that I suspect the concern about dog urine is getting those patches that are burned. And I'm trying to say, turn your problem into a solution. It's a very high nitrogen, add some carbon, and everything will be right as rain.
I read that you shouldn't use women's urine because it's got too much estrogen in it. I'm going to say, go ahead and use women's urine and men's urine. I mean, basically, I saw an excellent presentation about 8 years ago called Peak Phosphorus. And the idea is that we're running out of phosphorus for our horticultural endeavors as well as other things. And it's kind of like, if we don't start because we'll eat all this phosphorus, nom, 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 nom. And then we will send it out to our oceans where we're not going to go and retrieve it. And it's like, so we really need to be keeping this here. And so I've got, so there's the whole thing about the urine. There's also the whole thing about, I've got a contraption called a willow feeder, which I hope is an improvement over a composting toilet. And I can talk about that for about 6 or 7 hours. But I think that anything in excess is going to be problematic. But at the same time, what's in the women's urine is so rich in the fertilizers we seek that the upsides dramatically outweigh the downsides. I think for people, the number one problem that we have is salt. Now, in the UK and over here, we're not as concerned about that because the level of precipitation that we get is in excess of the level of evaporation that we get. And if that ever gets out of balance, we can do mulches and things like that to put it back into balance. But the problem is that with all those salts, that as long as our precipitation is strong, those salts get pushed down. Just like when we have all sorts of wildlife and other animals, birds, deer, all this other wildlife, they're constantly putting these urines on the ground, and yet, you know, all of these grounds still seem to be doing great. It's not like, oh, here's a place where female deer are congregating and all of the growies have died. So what you're saying is true, and at the same time, what I'm saying is true. Let's just, be careful about concentration.
Thank you, Fiona. That was a lot of pee talk, but very valuable, and there's a lot of people asking questions, so that's very comprehensive. Thank you, Paul, for that. We've got one more question from the chat that's come up, and we've got Matt who's raised his hand over here as well. So Andrew, are you still with us here in the chat? Andrew McDonald?
I'm still here.
Cool. Can I bring you up on the screen?
Certainly, Dan.
Cool. I'm just going to track you down. There we go. There we go. Go ahead, please. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Can I just say a few things about the last two things? So P wise, I've heard that it's important to think about what medication people are on, particularly if you're living in a community setting and you're using everybody's pee on everybody's garden, if that makes sense. And also, clopyralid was banned in 2008. Dow AgroSciences had it everywhere, and they were saying that it was safe and all this sort of thing. Just the same with glyphosate. They're saying glyphosate's safe. I think glyphosate poisoning would be a really interesting conversation to have at a later date, because a lot of people are suffering from IBS and stuff like that. My hunch is it's actually glyphosate poisoning. Right. So getting on to what I was asking about is so permaculture principles can be adopted by most people, whether they are lucky enough to have access to land, or whether or not it's just kind of more how you approach your own life. So in a metaphor sort of thing. So it's actually being able to apply oneself to managing land or getting involved with that tends to be, in my experience anyway, for a lot of people, being like some sort of volunteering opportunity, and they kind of, or they're lucky enough to have their own property first, their own land first, and then it's like, well, yeah. I myself, I don't have land. I don't have that. It's not my inheritance, if you know what I mean. I've got a lot of skills to apply to that. I know loads of people out there. There's a big community of people that have got skills to apply to land in a useful way, sustainably, etc. In exactly the way that Dan is kind of sort of trying to promote through Elevate. And so for years and years, I've seen this opportunity, that some people are leaving land in trust to things like the National Trust organisations, and but actually this land is maybe being mismanaged, in my opinion, and could be better managed if there were ways for people with vision, young people with vision, to inherit it. So when I saw you speaking yesterday about Skip, I was very, very intrigued, and I could see, if I was to take what I've been thinking about forward and perhaps the way you've done, I could see myself and others becoming like a hub for connecting people with people that are dying, and or people in that sort of stage of life, hospices, etc. Yeah, I mean, there's something called a natural way burials here, where people, like, as wicker coffins, and they buy land to bury people in woodlands, basically creating woodlands, and you know, so I think there's like the stepping stones towards what you're talking about already there, but it needs people like myself, like yourself, to kind of bring it into being, if you like. So I'm interested, have you become a hub for that?
Okay. All right. First, I think I think the fan on your computer is sad, and we got to hear.
Oh no, you've got mine. It's not. It's this. It's my. It's like my old school cine projector that I've got here. It's just a really old school color fan. Is it still doing it?
Not at this second, but for a while there, we were listening to that. I'm like, what is that sound?
No, it's a wind up camera that I've got here, and it was just like, you know, just that's the shutter.
Okay. All right. Okay. For a second there, you talked about urine stuff and all the people together and stuff like that. First, I want to say that for urine, for all practical purposes, urine is sterile. And so when it comes to pathogens, we don't generally worry about it with urine. And granted, that topic is actually 1,000 times more complicated than that. But for the most part, there's that. Now, for poop, that's a whole nother story. That's where you get the pathogens, and that's where you got to be careful. So I just want to make it clear that when we start mixing everybody's stuff up, then everybody's urine all mixed together. First of all, you want to apply it fresh. because you let it age a little bit, that turns into other things. And it's like, no, I don't want that. We want it fresh, like within a couple of minutes, not a couple of hours, a couple of minutes. And then it's safe. Like anybody could pee on a spot, and then the rest of us are walking around barefoot, and that's fine. I could go into great detail about how it's fine and stuff like that for urine, but for poop, it's a whole other story. And that's where we start talking about why is the human manure system banned in so many places. And it turns out there's a really good reason. And it's kind of like, it doesn't scale well. And what we want are systems where if everybody did it, it would be better than what we're doing now. And that's why I came out with the willow feeder design. And that's a whole nother discussion for another day. Okay, now to the thing that you're bringing up. What is the thing? What was the thing that you? what was the thing that you brought up? That's the real question. It was about Skip. Right?
Have you become a hub for connecting people to people that are in like the later stages of life and people that have vision? Is that what has happened in the end?
There are organizations that do that kind of thing, and they're getting mixed results. I mean, in the Skip book, I talk about my friend Mike Ayler, who went through 100 interns, and none of them made the cut. And so what he needed was to find somebody worthy. That was the thing, because a lot of these people that have land and it's close to their time, and they want to find somebody. They find a lot of people that are not making the cut, or they find somebody that is making the cut, but that person's already set up on a piece of land that they won't want to leave, because that person loves that land just like this person loves this land. And so it's kind of like, so that won't work either. So they need to find somebody that they know is worthy. They need that part. They need that piece. They need to know that they're worthy. That's the piece that's missing. Now,
that's the bit that's really hard. It's actually because people go to I've experienced this myself. You go to somebody and people offer their skills, etc., and show their worthiness, but then they're not treated very well in that scenario, and it's, I don't know, it becomes quite tricky.
And that's exactly it with Mike Ayler, is that, he believed he treated all of his interns really well. A few of them had a different opinion. And the bottom line is it didn't work. And so the thing is that, well, why didn't it work? And it's because they needed stuff from Mike that Mike was not able to give to them in order for it to work out. At the same time, Mike needed stuff from them that they were not able to give in order for it to work out. So it's like, what we need to do is bridge this. It's as if it doesn't matter. There could be 100 mics and 100 of these individuals, these people, and it's like none of that will ever form a bridge. Now, there are organizations that will form artificial bridges. It'll say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do some matchmaking here, or we could give something a try, and then it fails just like it failed with Mike. Or the other thing that they do is like, okay, we've picked somebody, but you don't get to know who it is. They're just going to end up with your land when you go, because we found that when we put these people together, they end up getting a little stabby. It's like it didn't work out. So it's kind of like, Skip is the idea of providing the bridge. It's a bunch of tasks that can be verified. And then when there's enough tasks, then the people with the land can be satisfied that this person is indeed worthy. And so now the relationship can move forward. That's the function of Skip. Now, you can do this anywhere. And I heartily encourage people with land to host Skip events where people can come and accomplish some of these tasks, which helps them to get their chores done. I mean, come and put up a half a face cord of firewood. That's one of the things on the list. And it's like, build a 3-log bench, plant some seeds. There's a bunch of little tasks that they could come and do. They take a picture of it, they post it, it gets verified. And so now they've got a verified bit, and then they keep going on it. And so it can be done anywhere. How do you facilitate it? Well, I think that the thing to do is going to be just through whatever means you can, see if you can knock out 20 or 40 BBs. And so a BB is one of these little tasks that can be verified. So knock out 20 or 40. Now you've got a certain number of BBs. You now have a certain amount of authority on the topic. The next thing is see if you can arrange. So you don't have land, but you can find somebody that does. See if you can arrange to host like an event of some kind at their property, and say, what chores do you want to have done by this group that we're going to attempt to invite? And then next thing you know, like, you can get a dozen people to come out, they get a bunch of little chores done. Those people are able to knock off a bunch of BBs that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to knock out. And so things move forward. That is how I believe you would facilitate it. The whole SCIP program is entirely free. I make no money off this whatsoever. I don't even know why people buy the book, but they do. It's like, it's all of this information is available for free at permies.com/skip. Free. It's totally free. So you could, and of course it's global. It's a website. And so there's people the people that have land, we call them the Otises. And then the people that are doing the BBs, we call them skippers or peppers. Kind of like the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band. Since you're in Great Britain, I said that so that you could help to relate.
Thank you for your answer, Paul. Thank you very much.
Sure. Next.
Cool. Thank you, Andrew. We've got Matt, who's been waiting in the chat. This may have to be our last question. We'll see how we get on. But Matt, over to you. If you're okay to come onto the screen.
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Over to you.
Hi, Paul. So I've read and I've heard a lot that a lot of seeds that are commercially available, so in the shops, online, etc., are genetically modified. Now, I've bought quite a lot of seeds and I've not seen anything on them that suggests that they are. So if that is the case, how do we avoid GM seeds?
Well, first of all, buy organic. Do you guys, what is the word over in Britain instead of organic? I don't know how it crosses over.
Yeah, no, we use organic. Yeah.
Organic. Yeah. Here in the United States, GMO stuff is not allowed to get the organic label. And so, that's a big part of it. And not all seeds are going to be organic. It's amazing where genetically modified stuff has been inserted. It's in so much of stuff where it's like, okay, surely. So for example, stinging nettles, I'm pretty sure they haven't touched those yet. I would imagine sunchokes. My guess is that they haven't done anything there either. So that's a couple of places to kind of get started. But yeah, organic is what I do as much as I can. I'm concerned. Earlier there was some suggestion about the glyphosate, and I think it's also the genetically modified stuff, which is making people really sick. And it's like, oh, I'm sick, doctor. What is it? You're not sick. You're a whiner. Go away. And it's like, I think we're all kind of tired of that game. So yeah, I kind of feel like it's important to stick to organic. I love what Joel Salatin says. People say, oh, I can't buy organic. It's so expensive. And Joel Salatin says, well, have you priced cancer lately? And so I think that if you are near death with illness, that the higher cost of organic seems like nothing. And then on top of that, grow a garden and, you know, start with organic seeds, spend the extra for the organic seeds. And then of course, nettles and sunchokes, which probably are not genetically modified. Did I answer the question, or am I rambling again?
No, that's great. And I'm actually really proficient at growing nettles, so that's good to hear.
And you might even find some places where it's a little bit of a park and they wish they didn't have as many nettles, and you could just kind of wander over there and get them. I think right now might be the time, but they're probably about to go past. You gotta don't harvest them when they're over a foot tall. That you gotta not do that. Yeah. But when they're less than a foot tall, they're amazing. When they get taller, then you let them to get that full height, and then that's when you can use the fibers of the stalks to make nets. And then I once saw something where in this place called Great Britain, I don't know why they call it that. They think a lot of themselves, but they made clothes. They made clothes out of nettle, and apparently it was very durable. Sorry, now I'm really out in the weeds, aren't I?
Thank you. Well, thank you, Matt, and thank you, Paul. So we've got one more question from the live chat, and I think then we may be out of time. So Martine asks, how can I deal with slugs? I've tried coffee grinds, eggshells, Vaseline, and copper tape. They're consuming my peppers, melons, and carrots. That's from our live feed.
All right, here's what I want to do. So I'm going to say a thing, and I want people to type into the chat where I can see it, which I'm not sure, it's not everybody's chat, but I want you to type into the chat why this is, and or whether you think I'm full of shit. Okay, ready? Here we go. You make a pile of rocks. A pile of rocks, maybe about 5 rocks high, just a pile. Maybe 10 rocks by 10 rocks by 5 rocks high. It's just a big pile of rocks. So why am I full of shit? Or you know, this, because this is funny. I was actually presenting I was a keynote speaker at an event, like, I don't know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. Yeah, it was 10 years ago. And I said this, and then somebody in the audience said, "What the fuck?" And the thing is that it's kind of like so much of this stuff, it seems so impossible, like it can't possibly be done, like that can't possibly be. And then when I tell you why, it's like, well, duh. I mean, everybody knows that. That's obvious. But I'm not seeing anything here about the rocks. So the slugs hide there in the daytime. Nope. So here's what it is. You have a pile of rocks. It's snake habitat. And so then like little garter snakes. Oh, there we go, snakes. Joe wins. So the snakes live inside the pile of rocks, and they love to eat slugs. And so Katie is saying not in the UK because you guys have no snakes. Is that right?
Not many snakes at all, no.
Okay, so I don't know. Do you have to buy snakes?
buy some snakes to deal with my slug problem.
Okay. Let's try this. So Bill Mollison, the creator of permaculture, his thing is he says you don't have an excess of slugs, you have a deficiency of ducks. So and so it's like, when you have more diversity in your everything, it's amazing how these problems go away. But there is a long list of things about how to control slugs. There's oodles and oodles and oodles of things. But for me, my favorite one is always, because here we have garter snakes. Sure enough, because I live in Montana, and so I've heard of reports like 20 miles away. Do you guys know what miles are anymore? We got miles from you.
Yes.
Okay. So about 20 miles away, there have been people talking about rattlesnakes, and I haven't seen a rattlesnake in probably 25 years. But we do see garter snakes, which are very, very innocent. They don't bite. They just mostly eat grasshoppers and slugs. And so it's like, oh, we encourage them. Now, I got to confess, snakes freak me the fuck out. So I see a snake and I'm like, ah, 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 ah. So it's like, not a big fan, but they are awesome in the garden. And it's just great to have them. And there have been a couple of times when I've gone out to pee on something out in the garden, and there's a snake. But surely, because the thing I've heard is that you guys that Ireland has St. Patrick, who apparently put all the snakes in his car and drove them out of Ireland. And so now there aren't any left. That's what I heard. That's what we're told. So I'm not sure if I got the details straight on that. But so are you saying in all of the UK, there's just not much in the way of snakes?
Not much in the way of snakes, and I'd be hard pressed to fend off your. I mean, it'd be interesting to watch, but I don't think we'll have. You might just end up staring at the rocks and the slugs take over. But yeah, we will not have many snakes here. There are grass snakes and things, but they're not commonplace.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe if you had more stacks of rocks, but I guess isn't
slow
Scotland...
worms. We might have slow worms. They might show up.
Do they eat slugs?
I don't know.
Okay, all right, all right. So that might not be a perfect answer, but there's all kinds of little remedies, but I really think the thing you want to do is to attract things, like include things in your diversity that discourages slugs or eats slugs.
Thank you, Paul. I think we've just come up to time. This has been a wonderful experience. There's been some great questions from our audience. We know that people some people are getting started, some people are looking at refining their practice. And it's great to have you here. For those of you who tuned into the podcast and subsequently had the opportunity to be here with Paul today. Perhaps, Paul, once all of our apple trees have grown, we can invite you out and you can come and be within our domain and help us on the ground in the UK to see how the land lies with our specific challenges, our specific soils. So it'd be wonderful to learn about any future visits to the UK. But we've got some links to share from tonight's conversation. We've referenced a couple of books that we talked about on the podcast. We'll make sure the links to both of those books that we talked about today are within the network for those of you who joined us via the Elevate network. If you're watching the live stream or the replay, we'll make sure those are in the comments for you. Paul, is there any other resources you'd like to share? Obviously, you've got permies.com, which is an absolute hotbed of information. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience tonight in terms of resources?
Well, I have like movies and the books, and when it comes to community, which you mentioned before, there's a book that I haven't published, but I was convinced to put out an early draft of it, and somehow that's gone a little crazy. The book is called Permaculture Thorns. It's available on permies.com. Then there's the permaculture playing cards, which nobody seems to care about until Christmas time rolls around. And I think a lot of the physical products are difficult to get in Britain. I don't really know. But we have events here, and we have people who come here and stay here, and of course the boot camp. I mean, the PDC is about to start here in a couple of days. I think that the Permaculture Technology Jamboree is a very cool event. I want to encourage everybody to study up on rocket mass heaters. I think that that's so important. And we didn't get a chance to talk about Google culture, and I think that's so important. And a lot of the stuff I have is totally free. Please, consume all this free stuff. Oh, right. 600 some odd podcasts and I don't know, hundreds of YouTube videos and things like that. We've been generating stuff for and of course the forums at permies.com. They're rather massive. We have 1.8 million people per month. And so please come out and lurk, just read stuff. You don't have to sign up. We're not one of those sites. It's like you gotta give us your email if you want to look at our stuff. Nope. Come on by, look at as much as you want. We do have the daily-ish email, the weekly-ish email, and the monthly-ish email full of content. I mean, you asked me about content. The list just goes on and on and on and on. There's so much I want to talk about, but that's probably Permies.com is where it all begins.
That's the hub, absolutely. So again, all of the links that we've talked about tonight, if you didn't get a chance to click them through, we'll make sure they're in all of our notes so you don't miss anything. Some wonderful comments from our audience who've enjoyed their time here today. I'd just like to unmute our crowd and give Paul the opportunity to have an Elevate round of applause for his time here tonight. So please feel free to unmute yourself. I don't think I can do it all at once now. Ask all to unmute. There we go. Let's show our appreciation for Paul. Give a round of applause.
Oh, is that how it's done?
Bravo.
Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you.
My 8-month-old son has just learned to clap, but he's in bed. Otherwise, he'd have joined giving a round of applause. My wife Lizzie popped in during to show this book, which is called, I don't know if you've come across this one, Paul, but it's called Drink Your Own Garden by Judith Glover. And it talks about how you can use the produce on your land to make wine. Now, this is my wife's grandfather's book. He made a number of these wines and won a number of awards for the wines that he made with the produce off the land. So he was what inspired me to create the nettle rum. I actually used a recipe from this to make the rum. I just adapted it. So it's amazing what you can do with a little creativity. And I want to thank Paul again for your time. You've been so kind and generous with your time. We've had a wonderful podcast interview that went out on Monday, and now this wonderful Q&A session. So thank you so much for all what you're doing in the world, creating such a huge ripple effect, huge inspiration, and such a warm and lovely character to be around.
Thanks for letting me infect a few more brains with my stuff.
Indeed. Well, good night to you, Paul, and good night to all of our crew here at the Elevate Network. Thank you so much for being here and showing up. If you're brand new to the Elevate Network, please do check out our forums and our events inside of the private community. We've got plenty more events like this coming up, so please do check that out. But for now, I'll say good night, and I wish you well, and thank you again to Paul and all of you for being here with us this evening.
Bye, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you.